Greetings. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. Once again, this is Chachi, this time coming to you through the magic of the interwebs, not only from Phoenix, Arizona, but also the wonderful country of Japan. And with us today, again, but not published the first time due to some technical hiccups, is the Command Chief for 5th Air Force, Chief Master Sergeant Brian BK Kruzelnick. Chief, welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution.
Hey, I appreciate it. And Chachi, as always, thank you for having me on, but thank you for what you do. You know, you served honorably in combat and non-combat situations for over 2 decades, and we appreciate that. And yet you continue to give back and try to make us better with Cape, with the Cape Revolution, and we appreciate it, brother.
Thank you very, very, very much for that. And again, I just love that I've got a friend list and a contact tree where I'm able to go out and reach out to these amazing leaders who are in charge of leading and helping thousands of people find success. So thank you for making the time. I know it's coming up on like 22:30 your time there in Japan, but you know, for you making the time, I appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind, for some of the readers, not readers, but listeners and viewers out there who perhaps don't know who you are, if you wouldn't mind giving yourself a quick introduction.
Yeah, so I'm BK from the block, and I'm out here at 5th Air Force, which is in Japan. We kind of have 3 wings throughout Japan, from pretty much the northern part of Japan, Misawa, 35th Fighter Wing, to the center near Tokyo, the 374th Airlift Wing, and then in the small islands in Okinawa is the 18th Wing. And that's kind of where my AOR is. You know, if you read my bio, I try not to dwell too much on that. I kind of dwell on what I'm supposed to be doing, and what I try to do is just deliver my commander's intent, right? His intent's understood and executed, and I try to do that from connecting airmen to what we do, right? And I think that's probably, this conversation might go that way. And to do that with dignity and respect. And I put that in my bio. It actually says that, with dignity and respect, because I think that's worth saying. We should always do that. And obviously, you know, in any military organization, you're focused on readiness and resiliency and training and growth and utilization. That's great, but the first part's the important piece: the connection, the dignity, and the respect. And that's kind of where I put my profession, or what I think I'm supposed to be doing. Other than that, you know, I'm a husband. My anniversary's tomorrow. I'm a father of 3 beautiful children, and I think last, if I'm racking and stacking jobs, I'm an airman, and probably in that order.
Oh, roger that. Well, again, welcome to this. Happy anniversary. So hope you guys have some good time off in the mountains there doing that. But, you know, obviously I would be remiss if I wouldn't acknowledge the global situation that we have going on in the pandemic with COVID-19. I can only imagine how difficult it must be to lead during unprecedented times such as this. What have you found to be the most challenging parts, and what are you doing to help all of your people find success?
Well, obviously, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody at the U.S. And if you were tracking it all, us that would live in the Pacific, we've been dealing with it for about 2 months now, right? So we are the leaders maybe on the way forward. We've kind of pressed through it. Korea got hit really bad. Japan, maybe not as much as others, and we're trying to push through it. So let's look at it. Let's put our leadership hat on for a minute, and let's think, what are we actually trying to do? So are we controlling, in this case, the virus or COVID-19? Are we doing anything with that? What we're really doing is we're just trying to maintain some level of sense as we go through this. We can't really control the virus. We don't really know much about it. We're trying to do some preventive maintenance so we don't spread it, right? And that's social distancing, washing your hands, everything that you guys are doing, everything that we're doing. But to me, with my leadership hat on and trying to lead the military, because we can't just close up shop, you know, I mean, we're here and we have to defend the U.S. and our nation and our allies. So we can't close shop. We got to keep moving. And I think from my point of view, I'm fighting kind of an information war, to tell you honestly. And I will go to bed and at maybe 10, and when I wake up in the morning, I'll have 8 to 10 new threads of guidance for the following day to try to lead through, which were different than the threads of guidance that I had when I went to bed. And some of it's pushed from our Secretary of Defense, and some things are pushed from the CDC, depending on the levels we're at. And then some really, for putting my Air Force hat on, is pushed from our our AFPC, or for those that maybe are not familiar with the military, kind of like the Human Resources Center for about 600,000 people. So imagine that, right? That's like John Wick coming to your door. You're mildly curious, but you're mostly scared. That's a lot of people, right, that you're trying to manage through. And Hoagie, Chief Hoagland, he's out there, and he's a great human being. I don't think he's sleeping very much, because he's trying to take these 600,000 people at different levels of moving to another base, or deploying, or just being at home station, and trying to make sure we all have the right message. So he's constantly pushing that out. So how do you lead through that? And I think, for one, you have to draw a line in the sand, and you have to get educated. More things are going to come out after you draw this line in the sand, but you need a foundation. So as a leader, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to pour through everything I know right now to be true, accurate, and timely. And then I'm going to have two avenues I need to do, and it's communication, which is obviously, Chachi, right up your alley, right? I got to have a means to communicate to the masses, and then I got to have a means to take the personal one-on-one conversations, because they're going to have to be both. You got to get information to the masses first. And then after that, there's going to be individual questions that you're going to have to field. And if you're the head of the organization, then I don't think this is something delegated. I think you have to do the mass kind of briefs. You have to own that. You have to have the information. You have to have it accurate. You have to have it timely. You have to have current. You have to get in front of human beings, and you have to give them that information, and you have to let them know that they know all you know, and that things will get updated. You will also get in front of them again, and you will give them the updates. And as you read and poured through all that information, you really had to read it two ways if you want to be effective with it. One, you have to read it to understand it. Now, that's different than just reading to pass, right? If you're in school. I mean, you have to read it to understand it. And then you have to read it so that you can see how it's going to affect you and your airmen. So two ways, right? Read it to understand it, and how does it affect your home and the people in it? And that's how you get in front of people, and then you have to educate them. Because if you don't do that, where are they going to get their information from? They'll probably go online, right? This is 2020. They're going to go online, they're going to throw it in Google, and guess what? The most viewed thing is going to come up first, and they're going to read it, and that's all they're going to know. Because no junior person is going to go to 3 official websites, pour through their site to read pages and pages of information to figure out what's happening. They'd much rather go to a blog, a social media site of some sort that's got 2 or 3 lines of inaccurate information, and they're going to take that and they're going to run with it. So to counter that, give them the accurate information that's digestible, and let them know that you'll keep them up to date. And for one, that's where they want to hear it. But in light of not getting it that way, they're just going to go to these other means. And that's where we're fighting the information war. I'm fighting Facebook. I'm fighting a bogus social media site. If you guys don't know, during times of great chaos that globally happens, people will just make fake sites. And the reason they do that is because they just want to add more chaos to the world. There's people like that, believe it or not. Or they'll mirror a valid site and pretend that they're a valid site, and then they'll add fake information, and they'll get people spun up. And when you have to counter that's the information war. So you do that with, one, being knowledgeable with current and accurate information, and 2, get in front of the formations and getting them the information timely, and then update it as you go along. If you keep that flow of information, you can keep their minds on their job and not their minds on what they don't know or don't have the answers to. And that's probably a long answer, Chachi, but that's the long and short of I think a leadership challenge, and how you should probably approach it when things are happening so rapidly and fast.
No, thank you very much for that answer. There's no way that was going to be a short answer. So, on behalf of all the civilians throughout the world, I appreciate everything that you and your team is doing to help fight the spread of this horrible virus. But kind of to a conversation we were having with earlier with your interview that you did on Armed Forces Network the other day, this kind of brings up an interesting point that we discussed about the possibility of that throughout the world when it comes to our understanding of leadership or the practical application of leadership. Like, we are drowning in information and yet thirsting for knowledge, right? And so we had a brief, and so you can be part like lifeguard and part like librarian, sifting through all this information. How important of a role do you find that to be?
Well, I think that depends, and this is why I say that. It depends on your relationship with the people that you're leading, right? there has to be a level of trust there. There has to be a connection there. And as you know, Chachi, I kind of moved to a theory of small unit leadership, right? And I think that's where everything is won and lost. And why small unit leadership? I think because if we look at where the majority of the people that do the work are at, they're at a small unit. And you can apply that across any service. You know, you can probably apply that towards any organization, any sort of business. There's always going to be the people where the rubber meets the road, and they're executing every day. And to me, that's a small unit. And the key to that is the connection that you have between the leader and the small unit. So somehow you have to build that connection, because if I don't trust you, you could give me the most accurate information in the world and I'm not going to listen to it. If I trust you and I know that you have my best interest in mind and the organization's interest in mind, I will listen to you, and I won't doubt what you have to say. And that's so funny in today's world, because if you think about it, we are driven through leaps of trust all the time. Anybody who wants to buy a car, what do? They'll go online, they'll do some research, and they'll look at 10 or 15 reviews from somebody they never met with like the name Ghost Rider 6, and they're going to take that person's word over maybe even a personal contact. If you do some of the research on this stuff, there's about high 90% of people who are influenced online by reviews, right? And of those people, about 88% of that, or 88% of those people will actually take the idea of those reviews over a human. They'll believe the reviews over the human, people they've never, ever met. Because we kind of built a society where virtually we take leaps of faith all the time. Did you ever stay in an Airbnb or heard of Airbnb? There's 191 Airbnb companies, or there's 191 countries that have Airbnbs. 191 countries. People are letting strangers in their home in 191 countries. You ever take an Uber? People get in strangers' cars all the time because they got 4 stars, right? I mean, that's their currency. How many stars they got? They got 4 or 5 stars. That's the person I go to. So there's virtual leaps of trust all the time. But why is it so hard in a unit? People that you live with and work with and you spend probably the majority of your time with, at least during the week. But it's so hard to make that connection on trust. I don't see, so Chachi, you've been out of the military and you've worked at different environments. And in these different organizations that you have gone to outside of the military, do you feel like you've taken the leap of trust with those organizations, or did you have a problem doing that, or what's your feeling on it?
So I honestly agree with that everything has to come down to trust. Everything has to come down to connection. And then for me, according to everything to me comes down to good dudership, right? Let's just be good dudes. Let's just be good human beings. And I think the byproduct of being good human beings is going to be effective leadership and interaction and integration and communication and things of that nature. But again, you have to kind of realize what those things are. Like, what are those actions that's going to qualify you as a good dude? And so I've worked in 2 organizations since I've retired. One, absolutely loved the mission. Right. Mm-hmm. It was my bread and butter, and this is what I was born to do, and loved it. Hated the culture, hated the environment. Yeah. So the trust wasn't there. The personal relationship wasn't there. And so I had to go. And this new organization, I went over there and said, hey, I built up some scar tissue in the past few months, with this other organization. And so culture and climate is very important to me. Is this one of solid trust? Is this one of communication, right? Is this one of teamwork rather than a purely authoritarian type of environment? And so I went in there kind of with more open eyes, but quite honestly, the thing what I valued most was I really learned to value the inspection general system. because for the first company that I worked for, the leader was absolutely dreadful, and I told leadership about it. Nobody cared. It's what I call admiring the problem, right? They're like, okay, got it, noted, we'll work on it. We can't change anything right now, so we have to deal with this in the near term. Gotcha. Hurt. Noted. Right. Noted. But noted also means F you on so many different levels. someone replies with noted, like you really just got told to shut up. So it was time for me to go. And so I'm absolutely with you on connection. And that also ties back to an earlier conversation you and I were having, is the difference between connection and manipulation. And a lot of this may be just whether someone has a positive view of these things or a negative view, or maybe they're not valuing the words at the same level you are. What are your thoughts on the concept between whether these two concepts are linked or they're different, or how do we understand them?
There's literally probably a million things I want to say to you right now, but I'm gonna keep them as orderly as I can. First, I grew up and you probably grew up very similar because we joined around the same time. I grew up in a military where if I said leadership, you said like that was the connection. Leadership influence, and that was the idea of it. And I think as I look back at it today, it's just archaic. It's an archaic way of thinking of leadership, because in my mind, I really think today, if we say influence, it's almost manipulation. And we talked about this a little bit. Influencers online, right? Because they have a billion likes or a billion views. So obviously they cannot be wrong. And people will buy stuff because they buy it, or they'll buy stuff because it's advertised on their site. So these influencers kind of master manipulators. So for me to look at leadership as such an emotionally tied thing, to say that is manipulation doesn't sit right with me. So I think that saying leadership and influence just doesn't go together. It's wrong. I think it hints to trying to change you. And if I think of all the relationships I had in my life, have you ever been in a relationship where somebody tried to change you, Chachi, at all, or you try to change somebody?
Yeah.
How does that work out exactly?
Not well.
No, not well, man. It does not work out well. So why are we trying to do that in the most intimate relationship we have, and that's between a leader and a follower? So why are we doing that? One of our former chairman of Joint Chief of Staffs, General Dempsey, he had a lot of great quotes, and he still has some great quotes if you follow him on Twitter. But he has said, take people as you find them, not as you hope they would be. So take people as you find them, not as you hope they would be. What does that mean? That means take people as they are. See them as they are, and not some viewpoint of what you want. Don't try to manipulate them into something you want them to be, so they do something you want them to do. Because that, my friend, is not leadership. If you are able to connect with them, that's because you saw them as a human. You've seen the movie Avatar? And they say a lot, I see you, right? I see you. And when they say that, they say that in the most sincere and thoughtful and caring way. So there's actually a tribe in South Africa, and I'm not going to say the terms because I'll mess them up, but they have a greeting with each other. And when one person meets another, they say, I see you. And the response to that is, I am here. So they'll say, I see you and I am here. What are they really saying? Until you see me, I don't exist. You seeing me brings me into existence. Bring that into a unit. Until you recognize me as a member of the unit, I don't exist in the unit. Leader, right? That's essentially what that's about. By you seeing me, I only can be better. By you seeing me, I only can give you more. By you seeing me, I can grow and I can contribute. By you seeing me, I can be an impact player, because when you see myself in the unit that I'm in, I think there's a lot to be said for that connection piece. But what does it require? For you to see me. And when I say that, I don't mean for you to see the year I was born. I don't mean for you to see where I was born. I don't need you to see what I look like. I need you to see me. And there's a word out there called onlyness, and I quote it quite a bit. It's from Noelford Merchant, who was a leader in thought innovation, which is a real thing. You can look that up. And she uses the term onlyness as a spot only where you sit in this world. So when we came screaming out of the womb and some dude wrote our name down on a piece of paper, to the point where we stand today, where the point where you sit in that chair today, Chachi, in Arizona, only one person has seen what you've seen, done what you've done, and been in the places you have been. Only one person owns those experiences, and those are you. So when I see you, why don't I see that? But we have leaders who start compiling excuses not to lead. I can't lead you because you were born in a separate year. You chug energy drinks. You play video games. You ask me why. You text. Holy smoke, man. I know 80-year-olds who text and 20-year-olds who don't. So every time, and we had this conversation, every time you look at somebody through a stereotype, you marginalize who they are. Once you do that, you lose the ability to see who they actually are, and you'll never connect. You got to meet people at their ownness. Because once you do that, then you have the ability to connect actually who they are, not an airman, not somebody from California, not whatever your job is, but the actual person to the organization that they joined. In our case, you joined a service, I connect you to that, I connect you to the unit you're assigned, I connect you to your teammates, and then as a leader, I connect you to me. That's where small unit leadership starts, and that's where you grow from. We say a lot that every airman has a story. We say that in the Air Force, every airman has a story. It just means that we all came from somewhere, and we have something that makes us unique. That's the great thing. When we bring something to the fight, we bring something no one else can, ourselves. The genuineness of ourselves, the things that makes us so special in the world is the differences that we have. That's what makes us special. And we bring that to an organization. But you know what else has a story? Chachi, the unit. The job you have, that place has a story. That place has a reason for being. And if I can understand what that is, and I can understand the person that works there, and I can make the connection between the two stories, there's nothing but absolute magic at that point. I'll stop there.
No, so again, it's kind of a lot to kind of pull apart with that, but absolutely on board, with all that. And the thing that, so like in that one answer, you quoted 3 different people, to have this going. So you have your master's in leadership. So like what are some of do you have any favorite of perhaps your own quotes or any other quotes out there that have helped you weave your way through this leadership journey?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I gave you one off of General Dempsey, right? Take people as you find them, as you hope they would be. I think that's great. Seth Godin has a great quote on saying, you correct long-term behavior with short-term feedback. And I'm a real big fan of that, mainly because I think we just get mad that people constantly do things wrong, but we take no steps today to help them correct, right? If you go to James Clear, he's got a book called Atomic Habits, and I sent you some stuff on there. I think we had a little bit of dialogue on that, and his at least premise in that is about habits. You talked about culture earlier. If I look at an organization, I can see 2 points of an organization. I can see the strategic vision. So where are we going? And that could be very easily written or said. And then there's the culture. The culture is what you do every day. Like that's your everyday stuff. And every day that you do something, you're building the culture one way or another. Either you have good reps, so you do good things every day, so there's good outcomes, or you have bad reps. So there's this taint towards people. There's this note it kind of mindset, right? Those are bad reps, and those bad reps lead to a bad culture. So the short-term feedback before the long-term behavior change could be, how do we get better reps? And that's got to be, what does it look like? Like, what do I want to look like when it's all finished? And if I can visualize what that looks like, then I need to do that, right? And then you almost make it impossible for you not to practice that every day. If you put it on a spectrum, if it's a fairly easy task, you probably don't need a lot of reps. If it's a moderately hard task, moderate reps. And if it's extremely difficult, then it's got to be all the reps you can get every single day. And James Clear kind of talks a little bit about, he uses some examples. I'll just use a guitar real quick. You want to learn how to play the guitar, right? Put that damn guitar everywhere around that you can, so you fall over it. Like you can't avoid it. So eventually you gotta pick it up. And don't just say, I want to learn how to play the guitar, be a guitarist. Like, so you have to change your mindset, right? You have to do the things that you need to do to become a guitarist. Don't do the things that you're going to try to do just to learn how to play the guitar. Like, you got to be committed. If you want to read more, put that book on your bed. So when you get up or you're going to bed, you're going to have to touch it. If you touch it, there's a high probability you're going to do something with it. Now, that might be chuck it to the nightstand, but eventually you might turn a couple pages. And in that, you establish good reps of doing that all the time. And with those good reps, you become, in this case, a reader, right? So very simple concepts, but it doesn't take a whole lot to just visualize where you want to be and alter the behavior through good reps or habits. And that's kind of where James Clear goes with that. And Frances Fry, she's fantastic. She's a Harvard professor. She's got a TED Talk. She has a book that's coming out in June 2nd, I believe. It's called Unleashed. It's got a lot of words after that, but just Unleashed and Frances Fry, F-R-E-I. And one thing that we talked about, and I talked about in a recent conversation I had, was about tough love. And we had this conversation a little bit virtually, not actually, but she had a great concept about tough love. And we say that a lot, right? Hey, this is just tough love, Chachi. And what does that mean? And in her definition, I stole it, but in her definition, it means high standards, low devotion. That's what tough love is. That's not what we want. So there probably needs to be an and between there, like, tough and love. And the and love will give you high standards and high devotion, right? And I think that's what we're looking for. And people might freak out about the word love, like, oh, they said love. We can't say that. And if you're not comfortable with love and empathy, then you're probably not going to be effective. Because as I look at leadership, you need to bring the passion every single day, but with that needs to be the compassion. So those are the yin and yang of it. You need to have both. And that's the way that you'll move to connect with people at their onlyness, and then to just put it full circle, and then hopefully connect them to the story of the organization that they join. I don't remember the question, but hopefully that was good information.
For people who are watching and or listening, do me a favor right now. Just rewind the past minute and a half, 2 minutes, and listen to that whole part again. Right? I think that's absolutely huge. And then going back to the whole James Clear. Now, again, this is a very broad, open-ended question, so I hate to kind of give you a 1-2 punch with this one. But as far as, James Clear's advice of, if you want to do something, embody the actions that's going to make you that, right? So don't just play the guitar, be a guitarist, right? So don't just, how about this? Don't just lead people, be a leader, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think some of those initial steps, thought process, actions are that people we need to display that gets them on that road to being a leader?
I tell you what, I mean, and there's a lot to that question. There's a lot to unpack there, as we would say. There's a lot of foundational stuff, I think, right? We could say connect with people, have empathy, understand your mission, understand what we say with commander's intent, understand where the organization wants to go. And that's a lot of foundational stuff, but I would have a lot of whys in there. I would say, why do you want to lead? Or what don't you want to do as a leader? Or if it's inspiration, what do you want to inspire? And I'm an intent guy, right? So I always come back to some sort of intent. Like, what is your intent for your leadership? And the other day, someone had asked me a question, and they said, what happens if someone doesn't like my style of leadership? People aren't reacting to my style of leadership. And once again, there's a lot to unpack there. But my biggest point to that was, what is your intent? So we might sit there and see somebody do something wrong, and we just pounce. Boom! Pounce right on. I must stop this service to the unit, and you're just on them, right? And you might be, loud, and you might not use nice words, and you might let your anger get the best of you. Now let's look at that for a minute. What did that accomplish? Well, for one, if it's somebody like me and you came at me like that, I probably stopped listening after the first or second. And therefore you did not reach me. Therefore you did not change my behavior. And therefore that whole situation did nothing but just have me think less of you. Now put your leadership hat on. Was that my intent? Was my intent to go in there and just blow you out of the water and not advance that situation? Probably not. I mean, I would imagine probably not. There are malicious people out there, and I can understand that. But I think 9 times out of 10, that wasn't the intent. So as a leader, you have to figure out how do I approach the situation to get the outcome that I'm looking for. But do it authentically, right? You can't change who you are. People see that a mile away. Be who you are. But how can I alter this situation and have an outcome where there's learning or there's advancement? And how do I approach that? And that's how you got to think through as a leader. Because if you're just going to come in with a hammer every single time, right? That's the only tool in your toolbox. As I said before, that's not leadership, that's assault, right? You can't lead in with a hammer every single time. So you got to figure out what your leadership is going to be. And we call that situational leadership, and we can go diving into that. But at the end of the day, be who you are, but you got to think, who are you? And what is your leadership style? And obviously styles will change in time, but I think your intent won't. I think your intent as you look through a situation will be, I want the best out of this situation. And then you move towards that. So those would be some of the questions I would have for them. And maybe we talk through scenarios and situations. I think there's great learning that's done through experience. The other part that I would always stress is don't be in such a hurry to grow up. So I don't know if you remember a few years back, Uber was just a shitstorm. Their leadership was horrible. It was not necessarily the leader of the organization of Uber, but they were in a toilet. Their organization as a whole was in a toilet. They just blew up so fast that all these worker bees became managers, became higher level managers, and everybody just shot through the system, and they were a victim of success. A total 100% victim of success. And the people who were sitting at very crucial leadership positions did not have the knowledge base, the experience, the know-how to lead at the levels they were. It was just too fast of a trip. And as actually Frances Frey, she came in and she was one of the people that came in and tried to help Uber turn it around. And for one, she saw a lack of empathy. If you think if you're highly successful, you're probably not worried about a lot of people's feelings. You're just not. I mean, if you're rolling in money and everything's great and you're really not doing very much, it's just such a great product that it's just taken off. You're probably a little loosey-goosey with the emotions, right? You're not too crazy about it. So maybe as I'm trying to show empathy to you, Chachi, I'm doing this. Go ahead. Right. The number one way that we show that we don't have empathy today? This phone. If I'm trying to have a meaningful conversation with you and all I'm doing is chasing my Facebook likes or looking at Twitter or, seeing who texted me, am I present with you? Am I giving you what you need at that point? And if my intent's not to, then why am I why am I even pretending? Right? I should just move on. And she was seeing that in meetings that we're supposed to have strong dialogue. And the funny thing she said is, what some of them were doing? They were texting each other about the meeting in the meeting. So, I mean, as being a student of communication as you are, I'm sure that just baffles your mind. Like, what is happening there? So they instituted easy things. If you come into a meeting, just leave your cell phones outside or leave your technical devices outside and be present for the meeting. And you imagine how much more effective that meeting is when people are focused on what's happening at the meeting, right? And then you can move on. So I really feel like the only way that you gain experience and knowledge is living it, right? I mean, literally gaining experience. And the knowledge piece, we have training methods for that, but you got to have the want. I need the want to be better.
All right, everybody, welcome back from that forced break due to the glitch in the matrix, the technical hiccups that we're going to have. But again, the problem, if we're going to have a problem that we can't talk from Phoenix, Arizona to Japan, and not have some issues, like, hashtag first world problems, right? So BK, I appreciate your answer. You got a little bit interrupted there, but I think that did give us some great perspective about what that means for the initial steps that we can take, not just to lead, but to be a leader. And then kind of over break, we talked about the things that we can do to help kind of find success inside our organizations. And we talked about flattening them. So would you mind getting into a little bit about flattening our organizations to making them more user-friendly?
Yeah, I think that's I think it's a great concept. I think before I get into that too much, I like to talk about what I call the delta first. And and we've talked a little bit about this too, I think, as well. But like I told you, I think a lot about small unit leadership, right? Because I feel like that's where you learn how to lead, because that's where the majority of people are that you're going to lead. And then that's where you build from, and you need to be successful for every job you have thereafter. There needs to be good small unit leadership framework to go forward. And so what do you do at a small unit, right? So where do you earn your money? And I think you earn your money in the delta. So what is the delta? And in my mind, the delta is the difference, obviously delta difference, between where the organization is going, the strategic vision, if you will, what I would call commander's intent, like where's the intent of the leader of the organization, and then where the humans are at. So where are the humans at, and where they sit, where they work, what they do, in comparison to where do we want to go? And there always will be some sort of difference between those two in the delta. And that is where you live and make your most money as a leader. So do the humans need information? Do the humans need training? Do the humans need equipment? What do I have to give them to have them rise the organization to the level of where the strategic vision is? And then sometimes that is culture. I think a huge piece of that is culture. And we talked about that, good reps, good culture, and moving that forward. So as a leader sitting between those two, between the humans who are going to execute daily operations and the strategic vision of the highest leaders that we have, you're going to have a really deep and genuine understanding of where the organization is going first, right? You got to know that, because that's how you evaluate where the humans are at. So you got to start on that side first. Where are we trying to go with this organization? And you have to have a deep understanding of that. You have to listen to understand, right? Just not listen to pass. You need to listen to understand. And then from that, that's where we talked a little bit about the connection with the humans that we have, and kind of understanding where they sit and where they stand. And you probably heard that expression before, where you sit is where you stand. So where I sit here, my whole world is what I view from this spot. To me, this is my whole world. And as a leader, the only way that you're going to understand those people is to sit next to them or stand next to them. And you have to see the vantage point that they have of the organization, because your viewpoint of what you think they should have is going to be different. You're going to have an idea of what you think that they think this organization is about, but you have to stand next to them and you have to see the vantage point that they have. And as soon as you have that understanding, now you get a little bit of glimpse into where you need to go, because you see where they're at and you know where you need to go. And a lot of that, to get that kind of feel for up and down, you're going to have to try to flatten the organization as much as you possibly can. You have to try to remove every barrier you can between the most senior person in the organization to the most junior person in the organization. And once you do that, you kind of have that trust, and you have this leading from a spot of love. We said tough love, but we know that's stupid. So tough and love. But everything that you're doing is from a place of love, a love of the member, a love of the organization, and trying to move them forward. And as you flatten the organization, you'll see that the most junior people in the organization will really be responsive to feedback, because I feel like in their eyes, it won't be malicious, because it's from a place of love. It's from a place of making me better. It's from a place of making the organization better. And then on the high side, your most senior person in the organization will listen to everybody all the way to the other side of the spectrum. They'll at least listen and hear what they have to say, and then maybe provide feedback on that. And that's how, to your point, Chachi, alignment is one of your principles. That's how you can really work towards that alignment through the organization, because now you have a free flow of thought, a free flow of information, and you have the direction kind of from the top end of the organization, and that direction is almost in person getting to the person at maybe the other spectrum of the organization. So when I say level it, that's what we should try to work towards. We've in my experience in the last decade plus, I've seen a lot of atrophy in our ability to do that. I've seen a lot of atrophy in our ability to connect, and I've seen atrophy in people getting in front of large formations as the leader, not a leader, but the leader in addressing people and getting things firsthand. And we talked about that earlier, building two forms. One is the mass, and then one is the small off ramps for the personal contact that you need. And that might not necessarily have to be from the leader, right? That doesn't have to be from the CEO or the owner. That's where your mid-tier folks really are going to make their money and trying to help those one-on-one conversations work through those scenarios. So that's a lot. I said a lot there. And just to recap real quick, right, is to try to live in that delta, lessen the difference between where our people are at and their ability to operate daily to where the organization's going, and really trying to flatten that organization by having a really good understanding of where people sit and stand in the organization and where the boss, in this case, wants to go. And then really pushing the highest levels you can of that organization to repeatedly get in front of formations with good reps, right? Good reps. Get in front of the formation with good reps. Pass really good information. Let them know where they stand in the organization. Let them know how the organization's doing. Let them know the successes that the people are getting. And then even personally recognize people who are doing great work, right? That should all happen at what I would call a roll call, or getting from that formation and gathering them up. And guess what? If you have 3 shifts across a 24-hour period, then you need to get across 3 shifts in a 24-hour period. You are not the king of day shift. If you are the king of day shift, you are not running an organization. You're running day shift. And you're not leading everybody in your organization, because you can't lead people that you don't ever see. You can't lead people that you don't have significant and valued time with. And you cannot delegate. You can't delegate quality time, right? It's something that you have to do yourself. And that's kind of where I feel we need the most work is right there. But you live in the Delta, man.
I like the point that you can't delegate quality time.
You can.
That's amazing. And then like in part of that answer there, you talked about, like in the past 10 years or so, which kind of maybe alluded to some of your leadership journey as you've gone through the wonderful thing that we call the United States Air Force. Can you kind of just share with us a little bit about that and how that's shaped you?
Well, yeah, I was a victim of my environment early in the military. We started off with leadership is not influence, but that's not what I learned, right? Growing up, I learned that leadership was influence. And in the maintenance world, it was very directive. It was not, it was receive mode. It wasn't two-way. People hid information. We both studied leadership. There's a thing called information power. And information power is individuals who hold information because based off that information, they feel they have the power, right? So some people in the military, for instance, if you have somebody that's more of a higher level tier, the tier just below them, they feel like the only difference between them and the tier just below them is the information they have. So the only way that they maintain this hierarchy is by withholding that information until they need to let a little bit out. And then you get into the point of do it because I told you, or you get into the point of just do it, right? So let's tease that out a little bit. I'm walking through the hallway, Chachi, you tap me on the shoulder and you say, hey, you're on 12-hour shifts for the next 2 weeks. And then you keep walking. And it was like a drive-by shooting. I was like, what just happened to me, right? I don't understand. And that's the way I was brought up early. It's like you just boom, no questions, you just boom. But is that what you needed? And is that what I needed to tell you for you to be highly successful? No. And we keep saying, like, I go back to generation piece. This is the why generation. You know why people ask why? Because you didn't explain it good enough the first time. And I know you can appreciate that from being a communicator. You didn't explain it good enough. You didn't invest in me on the front side. Therefore, I will come back to you 175 times until I get it right. Or I won't come to you at all and I'll do it completely wrong. 100% wrong. And then you'll be pissed. right? Why'd you do it wrong? Because with the information you gave me, this is what I thought it was. So you need to invest on the front side. So rewind. Same scenario. I come walking through the hallway. I tap you on the shoulder. I said, hey, Chachi, I need to tell you something. The next week, you're going to be on a 12-hour shift because we're in this exercise mode right now that we're trying to tease out some things that we're doing within the unit. To meet our objectives, unit objectives, we're going to have to manipulate manning a little bit. This way that we can have the full coverage we need. That's going to require you to be on 12-hour shifts, but it'll be for 1 week only. We will transition back off of 12-hour shifts. And then we're going to try to work some comp time for everybody who had to be invested in those 12-hour shifts on the backside. And then I would end it with, do you have any questions? Now, what way would you rather have that go down? I feel like maybe the second way.
I totally want the why. Like, I absolutely want the why. And again, we can get into this later. Like, there was a time and a place. So my understanding of this, spending like nearly my whole career with the Army, was there was a time and a place for just do what you're told. And realistically, that was from the dawn of warfare until about September 11th, based on communication limitations on the battlefield. And so soldiers need to be specifically trained to hear a command, hear a bugle call, see a flag raised, and go out and execute, because they couldn't explain that writ large. Well, yeah. We have the best communication systems in the entire world now, and we have such a huge mission on a global scale with such limited manning. Everybody needs to know the why, and man, I support that 100%.
Yeah, and to your point, there's a lot to be said. We're in the military, right? And there's not always the the time and the bandwidth based on the scenario, maybe to dive into dialogue. To be honest, right? I mean, that should be told. But the way I can overcome that is all the work I do on the front side for all those times where there is time and there is some bandwidth and I can invest more. And if I do that, those one-off outlier times where it's a one-way conversation, you just need to execute, then I honestly feel like you would just execute. And then maybe we have a debrief afterward where we kind of talk through the why piece of it. But we have built a level. I think it's beyond trust. I think trust is a great foundation, but it's not the end all. There's more than
this. That connection that you led with.
That's exactly right, man. There's something emotional. There's something internal that we have connected with that has the foundation of trust, of course. And based off of the fact that I know you're going to come from a place of love, which we discussed, not from a place of being malicious, and not just because you have power over me. It's totally from a place of love for not only myself, but the organization. I'm more amped to just get after that. And then we can discuss that piece later. But all that work's got to be done on the front side, right? There's this investment piece that's got to be on the front side. So when the time calls and bugle goes off or the balloon goes up or however you want to say it, we are ready to rock. We understand commander's intent because the actual guy got in front of us or the girl got in front of us and gave us that through our roll calls of daily good reps. I have a clear vision because I heard it from the person who developed it. And I was able to dialogue some on my off ramps on one-on-ones. And I feel very comfortable where I am within the organization. So I don't know if that exactly answered the question. We probably went sideways on it, but I feel like that's fairly important to get through.
No, I think that's absolutely huge. And again, everyone's, you had a different career than I've had. And again, as you said, every airman has a story. And for me, it's just like, we need to abandon herd mentality. Right? And that's it. And humans are just so tribal. So whether you're a maintainer or I'm a TAC P or you're a cop or you're a pilot or, hey, you're a comm dude or, hey, you're medical, we pigeonhole people into I just call it herd. Right. And we just see these just groups of cattle just, wandering aimlessly that we need to peel that back. So I'm thrilled that's part of your leadership journey.
And man, I tell you, it goes right back to the onlyness piece, right? You got to take off the stereotypes. We just had a young airman that came back from what we call Airman Leadership School, right? The first significant professional military education. And I know you know this, Charlie, but just for the larger audience, in case they don't track that. And they all come into about 6 weeks or so of education. They try to teach them about leadership, maybe a little bit about the doctrine of the service. But they're they're a conglomerate of all of our AFSCs or all our career fields or all our MOSs, depending on what your idea of these different jobs. And when they come together, I always like people asking people afterward, like, what did you think of all these different career fields? Did you see them as a nurse? Did you see them as a maintainer? Did you see them as a defender? And then a lot of them initially did. And when they saw them, that was their mindset, right? And then obviously you spend enough time in these classes because it's just a lot of work and you have a lot of time to be together. You muddle through all that, and lo and behold, there's a human on the other end of that. There's a person who has a story. There's a person who might have had a experience, and that uniqueness makes them exactly perfect for what we need in the military or really any organization, right? To make it grow and make it get better. The diversity piece is absolutely positively perfect. But the onlyness piece is so important. See people for who they are, not for what they do, not for where they were born, not for what they look like or don't look like. Just see them for who they are because they're perfect. I'm telling you. Unless they're a criminal, because there are criminals out there, or they're malicious or immoral, we got another spot for them. But otherwise, man, you are perfect just the way you are. And that's why we go back to not influence or manipulation, because that's change. We don't need that piece. What we do need is just the beautiful essence of you. Will we train you? Damn right we will. Will we give you skill set? Damn right we will. Will we polish those edges? Some get more polished than others, but yes, we'll do that as well. But the essence of who you are in your heart and inside does not change. It just doesn't. As we talked about, when you get in that relationship with someone and somebody tries to change you, you try to change them, man, it fails. It truly fails. I can't say enough. Any of my stuff that I try to do, I always try to talk about meeting people where they're at. Where they sit is where they stand. Stand next to them, sit next to them, meet them where they're at. Because that's where all your money is made. And I'll shut up on that piece of it.
So there's like no better way to kind of end the formal portion of the leadership study. Like, again, just a phenomenal recap, as it were. But two final questions for you, Chief, is like, number one, like what's one thing that people don't know about you? Because like there's so much of this is like, there's people who look up at you, like, hey, you're the 5th Air Force Command Chief, or you are a chief, but at the same time, you're just a dude. You're a husband and a father, same as everybody else. And so part of my goal is to humanize that. So what's one thing about you that most people probably don't know, even though you are fairly open and you're just a genuine, authentic individual? And then lastly, what do you do for oxygen? What do you do to restore your soul on a daily basis?
So first, I bartended for 15 years, and a lot of people might not know. I moonlighted while I was in the military for it's more than 10, probably less than 15. And if you think about it, Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about the 10,000 hour rule, the
master
10,000 hours of doing things to become an expert at it. And he replays, if you read some of his books, he'll replay some of the most influential people. I say influential, I know I say in a negative term, but we'll say the most impactful people, like a Bill Gates. Like, how did Bill Gates become Bill Gates? Did he just wake up and understand how to code computers? No, I mean, he lived in a location that had one at the time that he was younger, just about high school. One very close college to him had one of the most advanced computer systems at the time, which wasn't advanced at all. But he lived right next to it, right? And he had reps. He did reps. He went up to that computer system. He pounded on it for a while and tried to get it and try to understand it. And that got his mindset to be where he's at today, and it had all the success he has. So I guess for me, some people say, hey, you have a pretty easy way of talking to people, or maybe it seems like you don't mind making a fool of yourself sometimes. And Chachi might get that too, right? I mean, you're pretty loosey-goosey, right? You're not too worried about it. And a lot of those skill sets, I think, came from the 15 years I bartended, where I was trying to make money, man. So like, you got to be open, and I have to read people that come up to the bar and kind of see where they're at, right? And mentally or physically, and see how I can either help them or connect with them. And years of doing that gave me reps. And people might not know I bartended for a long time, but I did. I could sling liquor with the best of them, boy. There was time I could push $2,000 of alcohol in an hour, easy. And that's with ringing people up. And I got a lot of that skill set of at least being able to connect with people and talk to people from my time at bartending. So that's one thing that probably a lot of people don't know. I can mix mean drink. I make a hell of a Manhattan. That was probably one of my specialties. I did a lot of it at the E Club and O Club, and the O Club was a lot of more experienced crowd, right? So they drank the old school drinks, so you had to learn a lot about them. And then the oxygen piece, man, I don't know if you realize how deep of a question that is. You might, but think about it. So the oxygen, like if you're without this for even minutes, you're no longer here, right? I mean, it has to be that deep, right? And man, that's just deep for me. And I think initially what's going to jump in my mind is obviously my family, man, my wife and my kids. But my wife, I tell this to my kids. I tell it to my kids, and jokingly I do this, so don't judge me. But I'm like, hey, I picked your mom. You guys just happened. So I'm going to twist it where my loyalty lies. Like, me and mom connected. You guys just came afterward, right? But so I have a connection with my wife, and she just does so much for me. She's able to level me off. I think like a lot of us, we're hypercritical of ourselves. So she'll pull me back off the edge of hypercritical, or I might look in too much of a situation, and then she'll like, listen, man, that's not what it was. All it is plainly what you saw. There's no hidden meanings in any of that, So she's a very, very strong person and a very good rock for me. But I think another piece of it is a purpose or cause. I thought purpose, but to me, I think purpose is too ingrained in one thing. And I may be wrong on that, but in my mind, when I think purpose, I think of only one thing. But I think of causes. I think there's causes like with an S. Like it really drives me, man. Like it just, why do I want to learn leadership? Why do I want to be a better leader? Why did I try to get my master's? Why am I trying to do a podcast? It's because we have failed people. Like as a military leader, I have failed people and I hate it. And I think, and I say me, yes, me as a person, and I think me collectively, us have failed people in our time, and because of that, damn it, I want to get better at it. It's like a cause. My kids may not learn certain things about history or know how society has morphed to what it is today for the better or worse. Like pull them back 50 years ago. You know what society looked like? Pull it back 60 years ago. You know what society looked like? Like those are lessons we shouldn't forget, right? So, but we don't. Hey, brother, schools don't teach them anymore. They really don't. There's a lot that's lost. Maybe it's the volume of pushing people through. Maybe it's you'll learn that at another time in your life where we probably learned it at very young. But there's lessons there that, like, that's for me, that's a cause. Like we can't forget certain things, and we need to bring that up. I talk about this a little bit. The failing of airmen, and I give people example, and we call back to the culture piece. If I want to know what culture looks like in your organization, I'm going to roll up at 3 a.m. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to roll up at 3 a.m, and that's actually what I do, by the way. And when I roll up in some place at 3 a.m, I might see, in my case, an airman, because I'm still in the Air Force, an airman with their feet up, half dressed or half naked, depending on your viewpoint, drooling on themselves and sleeping. And when I see that, I am not mad at that airman. I am 100% not mad at that airman. Why? Because if that airman is so bold and so comfortable to do that at work, that airman's been neglected. You know who they've been neglected by? By their leaders. That's a leadership failure on that human being. I didn't connect with that person. I haven't even seen that person. I became the commander of day shift, and I never saw night shift or swing shift or any other shifts, whatever you might call them. I've neglected that airman. I was not there to celebrate every victory that they had, and I definitely was not there to help them through any challenge that they had in their life. I 100% failed that airman. And so that's why I want to try to talk as much as I can about the culture, good reps, try to shake off the atrophy of connection, the atrophy of getting in front of your formations, and trying to connect with those that you lead and your followers, and knowing where they sit and where they stand in their viewpoints. And tying all that small unit leadership together, because that's where the money's made. That's where the people are at, and that's where you need your most work, and that's where you cannot fail. So all that, Chachi, all to say, small unit leadership, man, you got to get that down because that's the foundation. And you can't walk away from any opportunity to do something. You talked about this earlier, and if you see something, you got to fix something. And I think sometimes we paralyze ourselves in how to do that, and we want to wait, and we want more inputs. Listen, man, it's not going to get better. So anything you do will be better than where it's at. You have to take immediate charge of the situation, especially if you're a leader, and you just have to get after it. Yeah. And if that's better reps, then it's better reps. If that's trying to change that culture to where it needs to be, that's where it needs to be. If we're failing in empathy, then we need to change that. If we're failing in our logic, then we need to change that. If we're failing in our authenticity as people, because we're trying to pretend we're somebody we're not, then we need to change that. And if we're not connecting people to your organization, maybe we're connecting ourselves to them, but we're not telling also the story of the organization, why it exists, why it should be great, or how it could be great, how can they contribute to the greatness of it. If we're not making that work, then we need to jump on that, and we need to fix that immediately, because not only are you hurting your organization, you're hurting the humans that are trying to support your organization, and that's just not fair. That's just not fair.
Wow, that is a phenomenal note to kind of wrap up with there. Chief Brian Kruzelnick, thank you for being on this podcast. Thank you. Number one, just thank you for the conversations you and I get to have. Like it is so rewarding. It is so refreshing. And I know for everyone watching or listening, it seems like you and I are agreeing on most concepts, but you and I have great conversations just about different interpretations and understandings of some of the words that we use, which is why building that leadership shared and common vernacular is so key. So here it is, as it's approaching midnight your time over in Japan, man, this time has flown by. Man, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I love you as a friend, as a leader, as a colleague, as an airman. I appreciate your time on the Cape Lead Revolution, brother.
Thank you. Right back at you, Chachi. I if you know me for any period of time, I always tell people I love them. I'm not scared of the word, and mainly because you never know when you're going to get another opportunity, right? I mean, things happen all the time, and we're not promised anything. So for anybody that's walking by any opportunity in their life, don't do it. Seize it immediately. But more specifically, if you don't spend the time to tell people who are important to you, those people that matter to you, that they matter to you and then they're important to you, then you're failing. Please turn that around. Don't ever pass that opportunity. Let people know how you feel, because it'll change your life. I promise you. And I love you right back, Chachi. Thank you for what you do. You're an American hero, man, and you're making the world better. So awesome. Thank you for that.
I appreciate that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call a wrap here to this edition of the Cape Lead Revolution. We'll catch you here next time. This is Chachi reminding you to always educate, anticipate, and dominate. We'll talk to you later, everybody. See ya.